And thank you so much to Spiritual Frontiers for inviting me to be here tonight. I'm truly honored to share this space with all of you and grateful for the opportunity to explore the astrology of 2026 together. Um, I'd like to begin by sharing what it means to be an evolutionary astrologer and and how this approach really helps us to understand the deeper layers of astrology. So, evolutionary astrology takes a more psychological and soul-centered perspective. Rather than focusing on prediction, it looks at the birth chart as a map of the soul's ongoing development. So, what I love about this approach is this suggests that our soul actually chooses the exact time, date, and place of our birth in order to give us the experiences, the challenges, the opportunities that we need for growth in this lifetime. And it acknowledges that we arrive in this lifetime with history, with patterns and gifts and lessons that we've carried forward from previous lifetimes, and that our chart shows both where we've been and what we're here to evolve into now. This type of astrology is less about what will happen and more about why am I here and how can I grow? And it offers a compassionate and empowering way to understand ourselves, to make sense of our experiences and align with our soul's purpose. I truly believe astrology is one of the most powerful tools we have for personal development and for making sense of our own story. Um, I'm sure many of you are already proficient in astrology speak, but let's just do a quick overview of the basics so that we're all on the same wavelength here. So, how I like to describe this is I like to think of astrology as a living story. So, the planets are the characters, the signs are the personalities that they speak through, and the houses are the different areas and stages of life where everything plays out. It's where all the drama happens. The aspects that you hear astrologers talk about, the aspects show how these characters get along or don't get along. And the transits that we talk about are the movements of those planets that shift the storyline. That's what invites us to grow, to choose, and to evolve. Now, within that story, we have our big three, your sun, your moon, and your rising sign. This gives the audience their first glimpse of who you are. Your sun is the core of your character, your identity, your purpose. It gives us clues about how and where you want to shine your light in this world. Your rising sign is the opening scene, the energy that you lead with. It's how others experience you and the lens through which your whole chart comes alive. This is the most natural way that you navigate your life's path. And then your moon, your inner world, the emotional landscape that drives your needs and your instincts. That's the most private part of yourself. So, with these basics in place, we can flow into what we're really here to explore tonight. And I want to be clear from the very beginning, this isn't about making exact predictions or telling you what will or will not happen in 2026. Astrology isn't here to give us certainty. It's here to offer perspective. It helps us understand the themes and the cycles and the energetic landscape we're walking into, both individually and collectively. What we can do with astrology is really pay attention to the symbolic weather patterns, um, the shifts in tone, the beginnings and endings, the periods of building and releasing. We can look at how the outer planets set the stage for long-term cultural and economic change, and how the eclipses act as turning points that accelerate our evolution. So tonight, we're going to look at the major planetary movements of 2026 and the story that they tell, not in a fortune-telling way, but in a symbolic, reflective, and deeply human way. We'll explore what these cycles invite from us, how they tend to show up in the world around us, and how we can work with them consciously rather than feeling like we're just swept along by them. Think of this as a guide to the energetic terrain of the year ahead, the peaks, the valleys, the places where the path opens into something utterly new. You know, I'm sure you all agree, we have been living in very turbulent times. And I think we all want to be reassured that this isn't the end of life as we know it. My view is that change has been needed for a long time, and change rarely arrives wrapped in a nice big bow with everything falling neatly into place. More often, the most meaningful transformations begin after a breakdown, when systems that have been running on an empty battery finally can't push forward anymore. Those moments of collapse are not punishment, they're invitations. And this is where we're going tonight. One of the clearest indicators of all of this really began, and I'm sure Bernie probably talked about this a lot last year. One of the clearest indicators of this began when Pluto moved into Aquarius in late 2024, November of 2024. So Pluto is the planet of deep transformation. It exposes what's outdated, intensifies what we've ignored, and pushes us to evolve. And Pluto does not move quickly. It spends 20 years in a sign, sometimes longer with retrogrades, which means every time it enters a new sign, it marks the beginning of an era. The last time that Pluto was in Aquarius was from 1778, yes, the year 1778, until 1798, a period that reshaped the world. This was the time of the American Revolutionary War and the French Revolution, moments that dismantled old power structures and demanded a new vision of freedom and equality and a collective voice. They were very chaotic and painful transitions, but they also gave rise to entirely new systems of government, to human rights, and to social organization. So when Pluto entered Aquarius again, we're not meant to repeat history, but we do see similar themes. We see revolutions in technology. We see shifts in collective power, questions about equality, the restructuring of systems that no longer serve the future. Pluto in Aquarius insists that we rethink how we live together, how we share resources, and how we participate in community and innovation. This is why things feel so turbulent right now. It's really not random. We're living through the early stages of a collective metamorphosis, one that dismantles the outdated and prepares us for what's next. And then we look back in July of 2025, just this past July, Uranus began its move into Gemini, and it retrograded back into Taurus in November of 2025. So that's setting the backdrop for this year, for 2026. By the end of April of 2026, Uranus will permanently take up residency in Gemini until the year 2033. It's a long time. Uranus is the planet of disruption, rebellion, and awakening. It speeds things up, it shakes loose like anything that's stagnant. It brings breakthroughs where we least expect them. And Gemini rules communication, information, learning, movement, the way we exchange ideas. Now, it takes Uranus about 84 years to orbit the sun, and it spends roughly 7 years in each sign. So, just to give you an idea, The last time Uranus was in Gemini was from the years 1941 to 1949, a period marked by massive communication shifts and technological breakthroughs. It was the era of World War II communications intelligence. It was the development and use of the atomic bomb, the beginning of the space age, and the formation of the United Nations. Uranus in Gemini, what it does is it accelerates information, it disrupts old ways of thinking, and it opens entirely new pathways of connection. And historically, it coincides with moments when humanity's understanding of communication and technology and global cooperation takes a dramatic leap forward. So, together, Pluto and Aquarius and Uranus and Gemini create a kind of electrical charge in this collective field that we're all in. These two planets both rule innovation, awakening, disruption, and the future. When they are in air signs, which Aquarius and Gemini, of course, are both air signs, at the same time, we see these rapid shifts in how society organizes itself, how information spreads, how technology reshapes daily life. This is when we see old structures break down and new technologies emerge. Information spreads faster than ever, and the world becomes even more interconnected, yet more unpredictable at the same time, if that makes sense. Now, this doesn't mean that everything is falling apart. It means that everything is reorganizing. Pluto demands transformation. Uranus delivers that breakthrough. And when the two of them are operating together in tandem, the world changes faster than we expect, but often in ways that like we've needed for a very long time. So when we step into 2026, we've already been standing on shifting ground. But this isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's preparation. It's the universe clearing space for a new cycle to begin. Change is unsettling for most of us. Yeah, of course it is. We're human. But when we remember that the universe works through cycles designed for our growth, we can meet these transitions with a little more openness and a little less fear. This is where our personal responsibility comes in. Because as individuals, we are being asked to consider how we can contribute to the collective good, not just our own. Every major astrological shift invites us to rise into something bigger than ourselves, to align our personal choices with what supports the whole. And I truly believe that every so often, humanity just reaches a point where deep, intense change becomes necessary. Not as punishment, but as calibration, as evolution, as a way of keeping our inner and outer worlds in sync. These disruptive periods are often the ones that actually move us forward the most. So, Pluto and Uranus are known as the outer planets, and they move very, very slowly, which means their influence isn't just personal. It's not just happening to us, it's collective. So when an outer planet shifts signs, the entire world feels these changes. These planets describe the larger story we're all living through at the same time. And then, depending on where they land in our individual charts, each of us experiences that story through a specific area of life. What makes 2026 so extraordinary is that all three of the major outer planets influencing our era, Pluto, Uranus, and Neptune, are all in transition. And on top of that, Saturn, which shapes our structures and responsibilities, is also changing signs. So, this many moving planets shifting within such a short window is really highly unusual. It's the kind of astrological signature that marks a true turning point, a moment when, like, the collective story rearranges itself. But the most striking part of all of this is what Saturn and Neptune are doing. Not only are they both changing sign, but they're also moving into Aries, which is the very first sign of the zodiac. In astrology, Aries represents beginnings, birthings, new cycles of identity. It is the spark before the flame. It's the impulse before the plan. So when planets shift into Aries, they don't just continue a story, they start a story. So when Saturn and Neptune both cross into Aries in early 2026, they are initiating brand new journeys for themselves and for us. This is another clear indicator that we're stepping into a major new era in human history, one that asks us to begin again, to take ownership of our path, and to contribute to the world in ways that are braver, clearer, and more aligned with our soul's purpose. This is where the deeper themes of 2026 truly begin to unfold. So, Neptune is crossing into Aries on January 26th, and it will remain here until May of 2038. Before this shift, Neptune had been in Pisces, and Neptune loved being in Pisces because Neptune rules Pisces. It's his home sign, and it had been there since 2011. Now, that's a very long stretch of very watery, emotional, and idealistic energy. Neptune in Pisces heightens our sensitivity and compassion, but it can also blur boundaries and distort reality, and it creates a tendency for us to like drift and escape or just get swept up in like all this collective emotion that's been going on. So, as Neptune leaves Pisces, we are closing a long 14-year chapter of spiritual dissolution. It's a time when the veil was so thin, intuition was strong, but clarity wasn't always easy to find. Now, when Neptune enters Aries, the tone will change dramatically. Aries is ambitious, it's courageous, it's action oriented. It does not wait around, it leads. So, as Neptune, the planet of dreams, intuition, ideals, the collective spiritual current, all of that stuff, when it moves into the fiery, risk-taking territory of Aries, we feel a collective push toward embodiment. Instead of dreaming about a better world, we now start asking, what am I willing to do to help create a better world? That's where it's taking us. This is where idealism meets initiative. Neptune in Aries encourages us to fight for our ideals, not just feel them. It calls for bravery on a soul level and the courage to stand for truth, to act on intuition, to take personal responsibility for the kind of world we all want to live in. Neptune in Aries brings a new era of spiritual independence, self-trust, inspired action. It's a collective invitation to step out of the fog and into forward motion. And right on the heels of Neptune's shift, we have another major turning point. Saturn enters Aries on February 13th, where it will remain until April of 2028. So not as long, but still a few years in this. So while Neptune represents vision, inspiration, and the spiritual undercurrents of our lives, Saturn represents structure and responsibility and the reality that we have to work with. So Saturn is showing us where we must mature, where we need discipline, where we're asked to take ownership of our lives. For the past few years, Saturn also had been moving through Pisces. And that was a placement that felt very kind of slippery and uncertain. So many of us may have felt that we were trying to build something stable on shifting sands. It was just did not have a good foundational feel. And boundaries became blurred, and plans changed, and realities felt less concrete. But now, when Saturn enters Aries, that fog also begins to burn off. Aries is direct, it's bold, it wants to begin. Saturn in Aries pushes us to step into leadership, take the initiative, claim authority over our lives. It asks us to stop waiting and start doing. It is the energy of, look, no one is coming, or nobody is coming to save me. Nobody is coming to do anything for me. It's time to start moving things along on our own. You know, it's a very different tone from the last few years. And I think we finally may start to feel a sense of renewed momentum or renewed urgency. And this shift becomes even more powerful because Saturn isn't entering Aries alone. Neptune has stepped in, and the two of them are moving together toward meeting at the same degree. They're going to be forming a conjunction. And this is the heart of 2026 and the moment that sets the tone for decades. Saturn and Neptune meet only once every 36 years. And when they do, they initiate a brand new cycle. But this time they're meeting at 0 degrees of Aries, which is the very first degree of the zodiac. This is a cosmic reset button. It is powerful, the beginning of a beginning. Saturn is reality, Neptune is vision, Aries is initiation. When the three of them come together, we see old systems dissolving, new structures emerging, and the collective is ready to take a new path. This conjunction will likely correspond with some major global restructuring. So systems that were already kind of cracking under Pluto and Aquarius may finally break open. And at the same time, new frameworks, new ideas, new forms of leadership are going to begin to take shape. Spiritually, we begin to reawaken at a soul level, which is really what we need to do. Collectively, it's a rebirth of identity. And economically, it's a restructuring cycle. I hope to think it will be the end of one model and the early building stages of another. This conjunction marks the opening of, I want to say, a portal into the next era. But the important thing to remember is each one of us has to act with integrity and courage and a renewed sense of purpose. So, with all that being said, I'm sure you're all interested in the economic lens here. Where is this all going? So when we look at these planetary shifts together, Pluto and Aquarius, Uranus and Gemini, Neptune and Saturn, both stepping into Aries, and that rare conjunction, we begin to see a very clear story emerging, and that story absolutely extends into the economy. So let me start by saying here that astrology does not predict the stock market in any literal way. But what it does reveal is the emotional climate, the collective psychology, the patterns of confidence and fear, and the kind of changes that move through systems when certain energies dominate. So what I'm trying to say is the economy is not separate from human beings. It's a reflection of us. It's a reflection of our behavior, of our values, of our fears, of our aspirations. And in 2026, the themes are unmistakable. So first of all, a global restructuring. Saturn and Neptune meeting at 0 degrees of Aries often corresponds with the dissolving of old economic models, policies, of frameworks. And it's not an overnight collapse, it's a restructuring. So systems that were running on outdated logic or old assumptions have reached their expiration point. This can look a lot like government rewriting policies, industries reorganizing, outdated business models maybe falling away, new systems being proposed or tested. It's kind of like the death of the old blueprint and the early draft of the new one. So, now we're most likely going to see some volatility. We are with Pluto and Aquarius and Uranus and Gemini. I think we're going to see tech advancement moving much faster than regulation can keep up with. My opinion, most definitely rapid growth in AI, uh, rapid growth in automation, biotech, in communication technologies, new digital platforms or industries emerging, and shifts in how labor, education, and information flow. Definitely. And volatility, I just want to say, isn't always a bad thing. Let's try to get in the mindset that things are just moving and adjusting. So Uranus in Gemini reacts quickly to news cycles and public mood and innovation trends. So expect markets probably to swing more quickly. And, this isn't going to be a year of steady, like predictable ground, but it is a year of opportunity, especially for people and businesses who are willing to innovate or to pivot. With Neptune and Saturn in Aries, the collective mentality, I think, becomes more independent. People may be more interested in building something of their own, like reclaiming agency over their work and their income. They're going to want to be more innovative. This doesn't mean everyone's going to quit their job. But it does mean that the desire for autonomy becomes stronger. So, like, I think we can expect to see things like side businesses, creative ventures, spiritual services, coaching, holistic modalities, small local enterprises. These are the things that can grow rapidly under Aries energy. Aries is the spark that begins the fire. And in 2026, many people will feel that inner spark and they're going to want to use it in their own way of expression. It's really important to remember this is a year of rebuilding. It's not a collapse. It's about laying the groundwork for a new economic era that will unfold over the next decade. No doubt it's going to feel unstable, but this is how innovation is born. Saturn in Aries, especially, is asking each of us to consider our role. What's our role in this new world? Where and what do you need to take responsibility for? And where can you lead? And what can you build? That's what this is about. And then in June of 2026, we have Jupiter shifting from Cancer into Leo, and this brings a noticeable lift in the collective atmosphere. Jupiter is the planet that expands whatever it touches, and Leo is the sign of confidence, creativity, visibility, leadership, generosity. So after navigating the early year restructuring brought on by Saturn and Neptune and Aries, and the continued influence of Pluto and Uranus and the new signs, and Jupiter in Leo actually will add warmth and inspiration and a renewed sense of possibility. Economically, Jupiter in Leo often correlates with increased consumer confidence and a willingness to spend, and growth in the creative industries, with growth in things like entertainment and art and performance, a boost in fields connected to children and education, recreation, greater visibility for leaders and entrepreneurs and innovators, all driven by passion and creative vision. Where Jupiter in Cancer was focused, when it was in Cancer, it was focused on safety and emotional security and protecting what feels familiar, because that's Cancer's MO. But Jupiter in Leo is encouraging outward expansion and expression and courage. So, hopefully we see people taking pride in what they're building and willing to invest energy into what actually feels meaningful to them. Jupiter in Leo supports passion-driven entrepreneurship, creative ventures, personal leadership. There's a resurgence of joy and authenticity in how we participate in the world. In many ways, the Jupiter shift feels like a creative and emotional sort of exhale and a reminder that even in times of restructuring, there is room for enthusiasm. There's room for inspiration and heartfelt creation. Now, let's move on. I'd like to move on to the eclipses. Eclipses are turning points. They speed things up, they clear things out, and they often bring truth to the surface in ways that we just can't ignore. They mark the moments when the universe says, all right, enough, it's time to move forward now. And in 2026, we get 4 of these moments, each activating a different part of the collective story we've been talking about. In our individual charts, eclipses show us which areas of life are being stirred, awakened, and redirected. Before we walk through them, just a quick reminder about eclipses, okay? Solar eclipses correspond to new moons, and lunar eclipses correspond to full moons. So solar eclipses are like new moons on steroids. They bring powerful beginnings, sudden endings, and major growth opportunities. Lunar eclipses it illuminates whatever needs to be seen. It often brings closure and revelations and emotional turning points. So let's go through these, each one in order so you can get an idea of what's happening. The first eclipse of 2026 is a solar eclipse in Aquarius arriving on February 17th. This eclipse lands in the collective first house, which is the house of identity. It's a powerful signal that we as a collective are being asked to redefine who we are. What do we stand for? How are we showing up in the world? This eclipse is forming a square aspect or a more challenging connection to Uranus in the 3rd house, which adds an element of mental disruption, new information, breakthroughs, unexpected announcements. So communication, media, public discourse may shift suddenly around this time, can reveal truths or insights that actually push us to rethink our direction. So the theme around this is a new beginning around who we are as a collective, triggered by unexpected news, conversations, or realizations. Be interesting to see what happens. And just to make this personable and a little bit more relatable, eclipses hit each of us differently, depending on where they land in our individual charts. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples that might help you understand this. So in my chart, this eclipse is going to fall in my 9th house. That's the area connected to higher learning, teaching, publishing, spirituality, religion, travel, the search for truth. So for me, this may show up as a new direction in my teaching, in my studies, in my spiritual path, even the way I share my voice. Now, many of you may know Catherine Smart, who is on the board at Spiritual Frontiers. And when I check Catherine's chart, this same eclipse is landing in her 3rd house, which is all about a different type of communication. It's all about uh, communication, writing, speaking, mental processing, day-to-day conversations, all happening within a smaller area, not the big wide world, but more in the her, immediate neighbor, what do you want to call neighborhood. So for Catherine, the initiation may show up through her mind, her voice, her daily interactions. And for her, it could look like a renewed commitment to her writing or teaching, a shift in how she communicates, or even a calling to share her ideas more publicly within her environment, her neighborhood environment. She may feel drawn to deepen her knowledge in an area she's already gifted in, maybe explore new intellectual interests. Curiosity is big with this, or step into a role that requires clearer expression or leadership through communication. So, my point here is same eclipse, different houses, different expressions, but all connected to the same larger theme of awakening truth and new identity. The next eclipse is going to arrive on March 3rd, and this one is a lunar eclipse in the sign of Virgo. This eclipse lands in the collective seventh house, which has everything to do with relationships, partnerships, agreements, how we work with others. And it's opposing Mercury retrograde, which is in the first house, which is suggesting we are revisiting conversations, we're renegotiating something, clearing up misunderstandings, either personally or collectively. And this can bring up relationship dynamics overall, contracts, alliance shifts, the we need to talk moments. The feeling of this eclipse is really about rebalancing relationships and clarifying communication, especially anywhere things have sort of felt out of sync. Again, to illustrate these differences between a solar eclipse and a lunar eclipse, let's look at my chart and Catherine's chart again. This time, the lunar eclipse on March 3rd. In my chart, this eclipse lands in my fourth house, which means the moon is highlighting home, family, roots, emotional foundations, anything that supports or nurtures me at a very deep level. And the moon loves the fourth house because she lives there. That's her home. Again, because it's a lunar eclipse, the sun is going to sit opposite. And it's sitting opposite in my 10th house, which rules career, public life, responsibilities, how I show up in the world. So this eclipse may bring a moment of maybe I'm going to have to balance or rebalance between my inner world and my outer commitments, or I don't know, maybe a shift in priorities around home and work, or clarity about what truly sustains me as I continue showing up publicly in my work. And for Catherine, this same lunar eclipse lands in her ninth house, with the moon highlighting higher learning, spiritual growth, travel, belief systems, a broader vision of life. The sun is sitting opposite in her third house, which is interesting because that's exactly where that solar eclipse landed. So for her, we're really seeing this connection to communication and teaching and daily conversations and things like that. For her, this eclipse may illuminate something about her worldview, a shift in what she's studying, teaching, or believing, and how that influences the way she communicates or shares her ideas with others. Again, same eclipse, same energy, yet showing up completely differently in different areas of life. And that's the beauty of astrology. The collective storyline affects all of us.
Excuse me, Linda, are you showing your chart?
No, I'm not.
Okay, I
I
was
would have
looking
had
around. I was wanting to make sure that you weren't trying to share it because I wasn't seeing it.
No, I did not share the charts only because it would have been too much.
Okay, understood. Sorry.
Okay,
Go ahead, proceed.
no problem. So, moving on in the eclipse season, on August 12th, we have another solar eclipse in the sign of Leo. This one is activating, it seems like everything is activating the ninth house. This one activates the ninth house as well. And the ninth house eclipse is often expands our awareness. It gives us a new way of seeing something. It may shift the conversation around cultural beliefs and laws and education and the stories we tell ourselves about the world. The feeling here is a new chapter in how we understand the world and our place in it. Then the last eclipse of 2026 comes right after that on August 28th, lunar eclipse in Pisces. This final eclipse is the one that's super interesting. This final eclipse lands in the 10th house. This is the area, the collective area of leadership, public roles, government, institutions, our collective direction. So right away, we know this one is really going to be significant. And it is forming an aspect called a T square with Uranus in the 12th house and Mercury in the 4th house, which is just a fancy way of saying something hidden is going to come to light, something foundational is going to get stirred up, and it is pushing a change in the public sphere. It is going to be so interesting when we get to that end of August eclipse. It often shows up as leadership changes, shifts in public opinion, revelations, disclosures, institutions reorganizing themselves, important decisions being made that affect all of us all over the world. The feeling of this eclipse is a reveal. Something's coming into view that shifts our collective direction or leadership. These eclipses tell a very clear story when we look at them as a whole. February brings a new beginning in identity, both personally and collectively. March, cleaning up communication and relationships. August 12th, expanding our worldview, redefining what we believe. And then August 28th, a shift in leadership, institutions, or the public direction. Each of these eclipses lines up beautifully with the larger 2026 themes we've already talked about. The restructuring, the new beginnings, the awakenings, the calling into greater responsibility and spiritual clarity. So, eclipses don't create the story. What they do is they highlight the moments when the story turns. So, you know, as we step back and look at everything that we've just walked through tonight, the outer planets shifting signs, that rare Saturn Neptune conjunction, Jupiter's movement into Leo, the four eclipses guiding the rhythm of the year, a very clear message emerges. And what I want to say is 2026 is not a year to fear. It's a year to understand. It's a year of beginnings, even if some of those beginnings come disguised as endings. It's a year that is asking us to be awake, be aware, be willing to grow. And more than anything, it's a year that invites each of us to participate in shaping a new chapter, both personally and collectively. We're entering a time when old systems fall away, not because everything is collapsing, but because something new is calling to be born, and we are a part of that birth. Every insight, every choice, every act of courage contributes to the direction we take next. If you remember nothing else from tonight, remember this. Truly, you are not powerless in these cycles. You're participating in them. And the more consciously you can participate, the more aligned your path becomes. Astrology is never here to tell us what to fear. It's here to show us where the opportunities for growth are, where the energy is moving, and how we can move with it rather than against it. 2026 brings movement. It brings awakening. It brings the beginning of a new story, and every single one of us is carrying a little piece of that story forward. So take what resonates, sit with what speaks to you, and trust that you're walking into this next year with more clarity than you had before. Um, I know this is a little bit shorter than what Smith had suggested, but we're going to take a short break so everybody can stretch and get a drink of water, jot down any thoughts that came up for you. When we come back, we're going to move into Q&A, and I would love to hear your thoughts and your questions and your insights, anything you're more curious about. And I'll be happy to answer questions in a general and thematic way rather than looking at individualized charts, just so everyone can benefit from the insight. So again, thank you for being here, and I will see everybody, I guess, in a few minutes.
Yes. Excellent. Excellent. I wanted to say one thing. This is for our recording, but I'm going to say it for Kim. Thank you for your presentation tonight, Linda. Thank you for being with us.
Oh, for readings, I'm sorry. Yes, you can go to my website, soulguideastrology.com, and you can book a reading with me through my website. Or if you want to see me in person, I go to Dancing Moon once a month, the fourth Thursday of the month, and you can schedule an appointment through them with me there. But I do Zoom. That's how I do most of my client readings. So,
Well, folks, I don't want to keep you any longer. For tonight, I think we're going to wrap it up. And I want to thank everybody for being with us. And thank you, Linda, for being with us.
well, I want
And
to thank everybody as well. And I want to thank Spiritual Frontiers for asking me and for having me tonight. So, thank you very much, everybody.
great. Well, we hope to see the folks here next month. Look at our website. We'll be posting the speaker for next month here shortly. And we want to thank you for being here, and be safe and get involved. And wherever you feel like you want to get involved, get involved. And have a great night. And we'll see y'all soon.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.